The world is changing and India is evolving with it. To discuss the road New India should take, we have Rajiv Mantri, Harsh Madhusudan, and Pawan Verma. Rajiv Mantri is the founder and managing director of India-focused venture capital firm Navam Capital. Harsh Gupta Madhusudan is a public markets investor who believes that the 2020s will be the long India decade. Pawan K. Verma is a former Indian Foreign Service officer and was an advisor to the Chief Minister of Bihar, Nitish Kumar, with cabinet rank. TNI's editorial director Prabhu Chawla and senior journalist Kaveri Bamzai will chair the session.
Let's get started. Rajiv and Harsh, I want to put this question to you right away, because one of the most striking things about the book was that profit is not a dirty word. And really, as we go into Diwali and as we go into what is supposed to be a festival celebrating wealth as well, it's very interesting that you say that where you have Saraswati and Lakshmi, Durga will follow, that power will follow. And do you think we're at that moment currently in India or not?
No, so thank you, Kaveri ji, for inviting us. Real pleasure and honor to be here with Prabhu ji and Pavan ji as well as yourself. On that aspect of Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Durga, we see that as representing the sort of triumvirate,
Yes.
knowledge, wealth, and power.
Yeah.
So our thesis, as we write about in the book, is that India, as it transforms into a knowledge economy and a knowledge-centric sort of industries over the next decade or two, as it sort of becomes a richer, prosperous country, it will automatically sort of agglomerate power as well. And then, the question really for us as a nation is that what should we do with power on the world stage? What will India use that power for? And then, we obviously posit, and as we have talked about in the book, that power from an Indian perspective, also from a Hindu philosophy perspective, India has always had a stance which is sort of taking everyone along, sort of staying friendly with everyone. All those values that we cherish, which I don't think anybody really disputes in the country. So that is, I think, what India will offer the world. While at the same time, we will stand up for our interests. We will stand up for what is our place and what are our goals and objectives. So that was the kind of thesis behind that thought there.
And the fact that profit should not be a dirty word any longer.
Yeah, and Harsh, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, we obviously are referring to what Nehruji famously told J.R.D. Tata, that Jay, don't talk to me about profit. Profit is a dirty word. Apparently, when Mr. Tata was asking him about the profitability or lack thereof of the public sector units, and that a broader mindset that profit is a wrong word. You can even go to 50s, 60s, 70s Bollywood movies and see how the person who's making some money in the village or the city is the quintessential villain,
Yeah.
if not the villain,
Bad guy.
the butt of all jokes. And I think that there is what has happened is what had artificially taken us away from earth or wealth as a normal and in fact healthy part of our civilization. We are just denormalizing back towards that. So it's not something new in that sense. And in fact, but even today, a lot of work remains to be done. I mean, in this coronavirus pandemic, for example, even this government, which is relatively friendly towards profit motive, is reformist, banned, for example, had a price cap on oxygen cylinders. And what happened was on the ground, it was followed, but then the packing charges of the oxygen cylinders were 3 or 4 times the official price of the oxygen cylinders. So the supply and demand matches no matter what. You cannot wish away reality. And we still have a very hypocritical attitude towards profit in health and education. कि भाई इसमें पैसा नहीं कमाना चाहिए.
Yeah.
But what happens is people who are politically connected, they end up making money, if not the right way, the wrong way, through these educational trusts. So we are basically talking about that, and it's an evolution which is going in the right direction. We just hope to accelerate it.
Yeah, one of the very interesting things you say is that Narendra Modi is a disappointment only in that he is a hope, which I find quite interesting. You feel that we are moving in the right direction, but perhaps not quick enough and taking too many steps back.
Yeah, I mean, my point is, if you're standing at $2,000 per capita income and you are looking at the world around you, aspirations are sky high. In that
Yeah.
sense, any prime minister would be a disappointment. However, where what we do with that quote is we are quoting Samuel Huntington, we are paraphrasing him, in which he says, in one of his famous last books, he had said that America is a disappointment only because America is a hope. And we genuinely feel that while the book is completely non-partisan, what Narendra Modi has done both on economic and civilizational aspects, especially in the first 1.5 year of his second term, I think clearly delineates why he is a hope for a lot of people, even those who do not always agree with him or want him to go faster.
I want to bring in Pavan Verma and talk about the whole idea of India that they talk about. That there's not that one the idea of India, and they talk about a more civilizational approach because of our ancient civilization and moving towards modernity. No one knows that better than you, Pavan. So, would you like to give a brief review of what you thought of the book and raise some questions as well?
Thank you, Kaveri. And let me begin by first congratulating both Harsh and Rajiv
Dhanyawad.
for what I consider to be a very important book. Why do I say that? There has been, without doubt, a betrayal in India over the last 70 years of the fundamentals of liberalism in the name of liberalism. And there was a feeling that a course correction was required, which enabled us to proceed towards modernity while retaining in full measure the sensitivity to the wisdoms of our past. In other words, a young republic but an ancient civilization, which both authors mirror. It's been my view for very long, and I mention it in a host of my books, including my latest books, Adi Shankaracharya or Tulsidas' Ramcharitmanas, or my book Being Indian. So I think that correction needs to be made. And in the process of making that correction, the articulation of a robust ideology, which is able to encapsulate what went wrong and what needs to be done in a coherent, impactful, and effective manner, is what I think, what quote unquote the conservative right was needing. We have had a spectrum of voices expressing dissatisfaction. For instance, when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru says that we have to get rid of the deadwood of the past, and he sees modernity in near exclusive Western categories. And in other words, everything of the past becomes superstition, prejudice, or obscurantism.
Right.
And that becomes the definition of modernity. Many people, including for very long myself, I believed that such an approach was to denigrate the great inheritance, the legacies of a civilization that we were. Now, for those arguing against it, it needed to be put down as part of a larger and coherent ideology of the conservative right, as if they were the left.
Yeah.
And I think this book achieves that. And if I may add just two or three things more, uh, when you were started off by saying profit is not a dirty word, you have to understand the Indian ethos, and by that I use interchangeably in some respects Hindu and Indian. I am not trying to be sectarian, but we are talking of a 5,000-year-old civilizational foundation of what is a young republic today, which I am going to discuss in great detail in a new book I am writing. So, for we had at the very foundations of our civilization the notion of a balanced view of life of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And even Vatsyayan, who wrote the Kama Sutra, when asked by an imaginary interlocutor why we need this book, he said that for a balanced life, if you pursue the first three goals, dharma, artha, and kam, in proportion, but not in exclusion,
Right.
you automatically graduate to the fourth called moksha. So it was a remarkable concept of a balanced life. And in my book, Being Indian, there is an entire chapter on wealth
Right.
and how we worship Lakshmi and everything auspicious, welcome prosperity. Now, having said all this, and the book provides you enough evidence of the betrayal even of the goal of secularism, which I support. Sarv Dharm Sambhav, respect for all faiths, but you have to add to it today appeasement of none. And that in one of their chapters, they articulate and document very forcefully
Right.
the number of occasions when there has been, for what appears to be clearly vote bank politics, the pursuit of minority appeasements at the cost of the majority community. So we have to take it on board. I cannot understand for a moment why during the freedom movement we supported the Khilafat movement. I cannot understand why Panditji, although well meaning, because I don't like to judge history in very dictatorial terms, said to Dr. Rajendra Prasad not to go for the inauguration of the Somnath temple.
Right.
I cannot understand why in the Shabano case the judgment was overruled,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth. There can be many more examples of this which are documented in the book. Now, I want to kick off discussion, raise 2 points with the learned authors. You see, there is a crying need for a Hindu renaissance among Hindus in a non combative way. We need to be once again aware of the remarkable cerebral ballast from which we have come from across the spectrums: metaphysics, spirituality, philosophy, social sciences, political theory. I can go on and on about it. Now, that is the crying need. And in order to once again reclaim that territory, the one thing we need to guard against is the excesses of overcorrection.
Yeah.
And they are aware of this because they mention this
They mentioned
in
this.
their book. The excesses of overcorrection are important because Hindu Renaissance cannot be based, if left unbridled, if left unharnessed, only on hatred, only on violence, and only on exclusion, because that goes against the ethos of that Hindu Renaissance that we are seeking to claim. We are a Sanatan Dharma. We have survived when many others have perished over the journey because of certain inherent strengths of our civilization, which we need to transmute into the energies of a modern republic. We cannot dissipate those energies by using that very process of Renaissance to be hijacked by people who neither understand the need for a Renaissance or understand what true Hinduism is or what secularism in the Hindu context means. So, that is one area that I want to caution about. Secondly, even though I support that chapter, profit is not a dirty word, we have to always remember that the three greatest virtues in an otherwise undefined notion of absolute dharma, daya, dana, paropkar, these have been Hindu values which have been hijacked by a state run bureaucracy. We still are a country, while we pursue the goal of profit, which has the largest number of the unacceptably poor, the largest number of malnutrition children, and the largest number of people who cannot read or write. So there has to be, in accordance with the very reform that we bring into society, a sensitivity to what needs to be done, not necessarily by unproductive redistributive policies where corruption often reigns supreme. But that sensitivity cannot be sacrificed.
Absolutely fascinating. Harsh and Rajiv, would you like to take both of these points one by one?
Okay, thank you so much, Pavanji, for your extremely, I would say, panoramic overview of the book, as well as more generally the philosophy that pertains to it. I fully agree on the last point, in forgetting the name of the Iranian prime minister during the Iranian Revolution. He apparently famously said, "We asked for rain and we got a flood." And so I understand the point, and as you rightly quoted us, we also understand the dangers of an overcorrection. Now, I just want to quickly kind of, for example, I think everybody here agrees more or less on 370. Even Somnath Mandir, as Pavanji quoted, therefore the Ram Mandir thing has also happened through a judiciary now. I think the only place where we perhaps disagree would be something like CAA, where Pavanji had publicly made his views known.
CAA, NRC.
CA, NRC combined, absolutely. CA and you have mentioned that they are the two sides of the same coin, and I understand the nuances, and Rajiv will also come in a moment. But we have to understand even something like that comes from a historical perspective, right? Like the Nehru-Liaquat Pact. Now, somebody like Prabhuji was born in Dera Ghazi Khan, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
I think he was 1 year old when he came to what is now India. My grandmother was born in Lahore, and my wife's grandmother was born in Burma and then lived in what is now Bangladesh. So as you said, there's a 5,000-year-old civilization, young republic, but even within the civilization, to paraphrase Muhammad Ali Jinnah himself.
No, I correct you. Sorry, I will correct you here. It is not now India. It was India at that time.
I know exactly.
Pakistan was not there. I was born in undivided India.
You were born in undivided India, just like my grandmother was born.
I'm proud of that.
And exactly, just like Manmohan Singh and LK Advani. What I meant was what is now India's political boundaries. And so the sense is that, there is a sense of, to paraphrase Muhammad Ali Jinnah, a truncated civilization. He talked about a truncated nation. I'm talking about a truncated civilization. And there's a sense that somebody like Prabhuji or my grandmother or my wife's grandmother did not have the choice that Indian Muslims in UP or Bihar did. When people say, we have chosen to stay in India, that's good, but that's not a favor on anybody. Whereas Hindus in Pakistan and Bangladesh did not realistically have a choice, except the few rich people, except the few nobles, except the Rana of Umarkot, which became Amarkot or vice versa. So I just want to make a broader point that this is a correction that is overdue. And at the beginning of the correction, we cannot say that the correction itself is, while being careful, we cannot overcompensate as well. And, you mentioned, I think you were hinting at chapter 3, where Rajiv and I document extensively in state after state, where the welfare is so blatantly sectarian and mentioned.
And the union government, and the union government too.
And the union government level as well. And it has been happening for so many years. And there is not even enough awareness about it. In the last few weeks, the first two Hindu men were killed for dating Muslim women. It did not become national headlines the way when Muslim victims of cow lynching become national headlines. In fact, they become international headlines. You go to Washington Post, New York Times, Economist, they will mention Muslim victims in India. That is perfectly fine. They will never mention Hindu victims of Muslim violence in India. And that Omerta code has to be broken, because what that leads to a sense of cynicism about the entire project of secularism, which is why the chapter 3 that Rajiv and I have written is called Saving Secularism from the Secularists.
Like you mentioned, in such a large country, there will always be criminals, and criminals should be dealt with as individual criminals. Let us also remember that, one of the self-described secular governments tried to bring something like the communal violence bill in our country, which tried to essentially ingrain in the law that only a minority community can be a victim of a riot. So those kind of laws have also been attempted to be implemented. And that's the fundamental schism, where we are saying that, individuals should be treated for the crimes or the actions that they commit, not groups. And obviously there will always be certain odious cases in a country like India. My limited point on that would be, are those actions, those actions which are not crimes, but are those actions proactive or reactive? So in many cases, I think these kind of actions are happening because of double standards or perceived double standards, where, there is a certain angst that side does it, no one says anything. So, why can't we do it? And then when this side does it, then there is outrage that are we turning into a Hindu Pakistan and so on.
Especially on free speech, especially to Rajiv's point, the reason...
I think Rajiv, I will intervene here because we are going into various issues now. We are here to discuss the book, actually, and we have gone into various things which are fundamentally, of course, we must discuss. And I'm a midlife child, so I know what happens. Your book, as title is A Idea of India. That is what we are discussing here. That's the book title. Both of you have dealt with various things. What you are discussing is more what happens between Hindus and Muslims and how they are treating each other, whether there's a overreaction or the excessive reaction or excessive correction. What I feel is you should tell us first what is a idea of India.
A new idea of India.
So we can segue into that. Yeah, we can segue into that.
No,
But I was simply responding to Pavanji's point.
Let me frame the question, because we are discussing as if we are reduced to what politicians are discussing, Hindu versus Muslims, how they are behaving and how we should behave. That is what we have got into, because I have faced that thing. When I came from Pakistan with my 7 brothers and sisters, we had nothing left with us. So we have gone through the phases. The question arises, a new idea for India, which is reversal of new India, which Mr. Modi wants to create. So new India, what is the difference between new idea for an old India, existing India, and Modi's idea of new India? Have you discussed that subject of possibility?
Yes.
Because he is
So I
talking
would-
new India in the
Sure,
form
sure.
of more economic power. You are seems to be discussing more about as a cultural power. This is what I
No,
can feel
I
from your
think-
discussion so far. Profit you are introduced
So Harsh,
there.
Harsh, you can go first, then I'll follow.
Yes. Okay. So Prabhuji, I understand you're absolutely right. We were just responding to Pavanji's opening remarks. But let us first discuss about the basic thesis of the book. I think the basic thesis of the book is India is a civilization that is thousands of years old. The word that best encapsulates that civilization is the word dharma. Dharma is an overarching word which is a non-translatable. It includes economics. It's not a narrow religion kind of sense. Just the word religion to Hinduism itself is a bit of a problematic description, and we can discuss that separately. It's a very Protestant way of thinking. It's an ancient civilization that we now think is becoming a nation. That we actually agree that it has always been a civilization, and it is becoming more of a coherent nation through the instrumentality of a modern democratic state. Why? Because the modern democratic state has led to a mixing and matching and moving and mating that, while probably was more common till about 1500 years ago when the caste system kind of calcified and India kind of went to an involution, then it was invaded and it was under foreign occupation for centuries and centuries, and that was not just the British occupation. It is now getting back something and it's a process that has started. It's only accelerating right now. Even the IAS and the ICS, when a Tamil officer is an IAS officer in Haryana, that is a sense of an all India integration, or vice versa, right? And that now with the markets, and now with women getting financially and sexually independent, and with people now actually having jobs which is beyond the trifecta of government, IAS, engineer, doctor, and therefore they can be a radio jockey, therefore they can go and have their passions. That sense of individual freedom, of unique individuality being respected, where you are not seen as only and above what your birth is, your group identity is. And while society can continue to see it, the state must see us as individual citizens. The state must not see us as members of groups, be it for educational minority concessions, be it for personal laws. You cannot have personal law reform for one community and not for the other community. We must all be seen as individuals. Napoleon famously told about Jews that we, under the French Revolution, and it was later on changed to some extent, that we will give Jews all the rights as individuals and no rights as a nation.
You see, I will again put it back. First, tell me in one sentence, 3 words. What is the new idea?
So the new idea.
I would put it very simply. I would say the state should
I'm a
see
new journalist.
Indians
I'm
as
looking for a
individuals.
headline. What is the new idea?
The headline is
the Indian state should see Indians as individuals, not as members of groups.
No. What is the new idea for India? Mr. Modi's idea of new India, I understood, is more economic power. Your idea of new India is going back to civilization, heritage, which we get.
They're actually interconnected. Actually, I think society and economy are interconnected. So when we have liberal economy, we also have a virtuous cycle where there's more freedom in society. More freedom in society leads to a kind of cry for more free economy. So I think they both go in a virtuous cycle.
Why I'm raising this question again and again, because in the process, Pawan spoke very well about the whole thing. Because now I noticed during the past couple of years, after Mrs. Advani coined this word of pseudo-secularism, which became a bad word, nobody uses secularism at the moment. It has been replaced by liberalism now. Because liberalism is the new word for secularism. Because those who are secularists, they don't want to call them as secularists now, because they have understood that secularism means some kind of a bad name. Now they have become liberals. What you are
So-
discussing here, liberalism as the new replacement for secularism, and what was happening in India, which I understood as a student and then later on as a journalist, that why this conflict has arisen. Because earlier you had 1,000 years of Mughal Raj, thereafter we had 250 years odd years of English Raj. And what happened, your civilization was totally vitiated, demolished altogether. And Madrasa post-independence became the source of education for the fundamentalists. And public school educated boys and girls, including Pawan Verma and Kaveri Bamda here, for them, what were taught to them was secularism. They said, okay, सब धर्म हमारे लिए अच्छे हैं, प्रार्थना भी वहाँ करते थे, prayer भी करते थे.
See-
Whereas madrasa were teaching, no, our dharma is better than the best. We are the only dharma which is a religion
So
which is acceptable.
Mm,
So that led to this kind of religion disparity between this, because all the public school background people who were educated in good school, and they started the language of peace in terms of secularism. देश के लिए हिंदू धर्म, हिंदू सिख भाई सब भाई भाई जो नारा लगा था, that is the product of outcome of the secular education.
So-
Not
so-
in the book, frankly speaking, therefore I can't say it. So why I want to ask you is that this liberalism is the new word for secularism, and the new idea of India means what in terms of this
So,
liberalism,
Prabhuji,
which
I'll
is being
answer.
misused to demolish
Prabhuji,
Indian civilization.
I got your question. I'll answer it. The answer is very simple in the subtitle itself. It is individual rights in a civilizational state. And the reason why that is relevant is a lot of people see them as orthogonal. They see them as opposite. They see individual rights as part of liberalism, and they see civilizational rights as Hindutva, something that would be opposing that. And what we try to do in the book is actually the two are very much in sync with each other. There are boundary cases exceptions, in which case you'll have to take a more liberal view, and there are boundary cases exceptions. We say, for example, Kashmir, Pakistan, Karl Popper, there is a section. You'll have to take a more civilizational view, the way Abraham Lincoln himself suspended habeas corpus. So, what we are trying to do is this is the age-old Indian idea of synthesis. We are trying to synthesize between individual rights and a civilizational state. Now, on your point about secularism ko ab liberalism bol rahe hain, and Pawanji had mentioned Sarva Dharma Sambhav, we actually say the secularism itself is very deeply misunderstood. It is not just the obvious vote bank politics of pseudo-secularism. Even those who support it, for example, I don't think Sarva Dharma Sambhav is the right understanding of secularism. I think the right understanding of secularism is Panth Nirpeksh. In the eyes of the state, all paths would be treated equally and neutrally. It's not about equal respect, and we are seeing this play in front of our eyes in France right now. It is not about equal respect to all religions, even though French secularism may be different from American secularism, and you can have all these differences. The state is not supposed to respect religion, any religion or irreligion. It is supposed to be neutral. It is supposed to respect individual rights. And therefore, the reason that is because if you are respecting religions, then of course you have to support blasphemy laws.
Pawan will be able to handle the question. I think, Pawan, you can give the little more background on this. I'm a little worried about, not very concerned that liberalism replacing secularism now. Because all the secularists are now liberalists now. They now always talk about when Muslim is being killed by an Hindu, it become a headline in various newspapers, and Hindu is being killed by a Muslim. For example, what happened in Faridabad Day for yesterday. I don't find discussions on this. Hathras are being discussed every day and whatever was happening there. But whenever this kind of, why it is happening? Because the liberals who occupy the media space as well as the opinion, they are afraid of taking the real stand what is happening in the society. Because society is being polarizing, whatever we say, it is because the liberals are failing in their duty, which you pointed out at the beginning, that it can't be excessive correction. It has to be progressive correction. So progressive correction is not happening. Excessive correction is happening. Use of force is happening. But this, how the liberal change their idea, because they don't want to be seen standing next to a Hindu. Hindu of a not Tilakdhari type, but Hindu of a liberal mind.
You see, a very important point from Prabhu, you have raised, put your finger on it, and Harsh and Rajiv. I'm being, it's not that I don't agree with you in every respect. I'm deliberately trying to be the devil's advocate to get responses from you. And because it's part of the research and writing I'm doing now. For instance, the secularists who went to public schools, who espouse secularism even in their sleep, they were not culturally rooted. They had not read the Ramayana except as a comic book. They knew more of Shakespeare than of Kalidas.
Correct.
If you talk to them in Hindi, they sought privilege only on the basis of the fluency and accent of their English. In other
Even
words,
now, Pawan, they know read more Harry Potter than they read any other book.
correct. Now, my point is that this lack of cultural rootedness on their part has partly made them irrelevant because no one is now living in that cocooned world of a small anglicized elite. The democratization of politics has gone far beyond that. So we knew a new idiom for India, which is partly what your book alludes to. And we need to replace them by those who don't fully throw the baby out with the bath water but make correction. Now, let me talk to you about the French example and secularism and Sarvdharm Sambhav and Dharmnirpeksh and Panth Nirpeksh. I entirely agree with you that secularism had become in politics a means of appeasing minorities for very long for vote bank politics. It created, rightly, I think, in many minds, and especially in the majority community, a Hindu backlash. True. But we come from a tradition, when you say, give the French example, the state must not interfere in any faith and respect all, not respect, but not interfere. France is a very peculiar example, by the way. In the garb of their non-intervention in religion, there is a straightforward attempt that there should be no attempt in any form to disturb the overwhelmingly majority Christian, Catholic, French-speaking population. You didn't mind it when you colonized people and brutally in Africa. But now when the debris floats into your country, you want to keep them in ghettos and justify your policy by this business of maintaining the dominance of the white, French-speaking, let us say, largely Catholic community. So I'm not going into it. I can discuss it separately with you in great detail. Our approach has been respect all faiths. Ekam satya vipraha bahuda vadanti. Ano bhadra kritavo yantu vishvata. Udar charitanam vasudhaiv kutumbakam. It has been our approach. We respect all faiths. It's a multicultural. I mean, no one has been burnt on the stake or beheaded for heresy. Adi Shankaracharya ka say, na mantro, na tirtham, na vedo, na yagna. He even negated the Vedas. He's part of Hinduism. He's the man who revived Hinduism. So our approach is, you have a point of view, we respect that. The state will remain neutral, will not move in unless a particular circumstance requires affirmative action for a particular community where religion will not be the only guiding motive, but human misery can be. But I'm talking of exceptional situations. You have to take into account these things. Secondly, and I want to raise this with you, the need for a new idea of India must be to correct and to introspect simultaneously. Now, you have talked at great length about a uniform civil code and the need for it, and the fact that Hindu law was amended but Muslim law was not. Agreed. Give me a draft of a uniform civil code and tell me what needs to be reformed within Hindu personal law also. Why I ask you this question? Because at one level, you say the state should not interfere in any practice of any faith. When you talk against the rationalists and others, you say they should not interfere. We should have the right. At the same time, you seek interference through a uniform civil code, which I support. But
Pawan,
what
can I answer?
No, so
Can I
yeah, just on the point of rationalists, actually, our case isn't that they should not interfere. I think what we have tried to say is that you don't need a separate anti-superstition law, because whatever, whether it's like some kinds of duping or some kinds of cheating or whatever the so-called criminals are doing, and what the anti-superstition activists are trying to fight are already covered by existing laws. Yeah. So having a separate specific law for anti-superstition In fact, and then there are these.
But I must intervene. Do you not think that that kind of debate is similar to the debate between the Charvak school and, for instance, Advait school? The Charvak, there is
Pavanji,
no,
before
you allow that in Hinduism.
No, Pavanji, before going to Charvak and Advait and Aghoris, so we want to understand the point of view is religion. You're neutral to not just religion, you're neutral to irreligion also. So when you are banning something, Aghoris, you're not allowed to ban Aghoris. For example, it is a civil crime to murder. It is a civil crime to rape. It is a civil crime to rape a murdered corpse, whatever it is. You don't need
or cheat someone. Cheating is
cheating
fraud.
Cheating fraud. So,
yeah, all of that.
So you don't. If you are saying separately, then you are saying individual rights may. If the same thing is done in a civil situation in a secular world, then it is okay. But if it is being done in the name of religion superstition, then we'll go and ban it. That is a. And let me just finish. And because the reason I'm saying that an individual rights analogy applies. It is not interference to have the same laws for all citizens for marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption across that is how it is in the US. That is how it is in the UK, despite an Anglican state church. That is what is it in Australia, again, despite an Anglican state church. So what will you say to some Hindu Rajput community in which traditionally men had married more than one wife? Was there interference? It is not interference. Goa has one uniform civil code. And I think largely what the Hindu civil law right now is, after especially the Supreme Court judgments, that not just prospectively but retrospectively, by default, daughters will get the same property whether they are married or not. So I actually think, and this is politically incorrect to say, the reformed Hindu code, even leaving the Goa example, is good enough for the Uniform Civil Code as a starting point. And this excuse that where is the draft, I think is just a delaying tactic. And people say about Hindu, HUF trusts. भाई HUF trust को IUF trust बना दो, Indian Undivided Family Trust बना दो, or remove the whole thing.
No. So therefore, let me intervene, because your book is something which the world will read, but I get to ask you questions here, and I think people should read the book. You see, what is common between Veer Savarkar and Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhi? They may seem, as known in public discourse, as diametrically opposed, but both were categorical proponents of reform within Hindu society.
Absolutely.
Veer Savarkar wrote down a 7-point program. His document in Hindutva is very short, but what is important in it, as much as his desire to reclaim lost Hindu cultural and civilizational legacy, perhaps more militantly than a republic can today sustain, was the reform of Hindu society. Now, if the need for a new India in some form precludes essential reform, even if it is initiated by the state, it should not be initiated selectively. But if it is in conformity with existing constitutional principles, my worry is when the BJP now opposes the opposition to Manusmriti in those lines where he expressly speaks of subjugation of women. By the way, the Manusmriti is not a consistent text. It has many contradictions in it, and there are aspects of it which you can support, aspects which you denounce.
Can I respond, Pavanji?
You can't have a situation where if you denounce the Manusmriti for its derogatory words about women and their state of permanent subjugation, you have the Hindu right-wing party, quote unquote, starting to protest.
Pavanji, let me just answer this by saying, first of all, Rajiv and I do not represent the BJP. No, but let me respond to that example only, that as you rightly mentioned, even in the Manusmriti, there are quotes that are absolutely derogatory towards women, and there are quotes that where women are worshipped, the gods live. There are both kind of quotes. And it is free expression to have the Manusmriti, and it's free expression just to have the Quran. There was even a Calcutta Quran petition that said, in the name of hate speech, ban the Quran. Nobody is going to ban the Quran. Nobody should ban the Manusmriti. Now, on the point of women rights and the BJP has been, the Prime Minister has spoken from the Red Fort about menstruating women. The BJP has made all abortions legal except the last trimester. So I don't think anybody realistically can say, except out of political rhetoric, that the BJP has in any case whatsoever be anti-women. If at all, the BJP has right now been talking about
anti-women, it may be pro-Manusmritis.
As you rightly as you rightly mentioned, the Manusmriti is a complex text. And if the BJP is politically saying that let us not blame only Manusmriti or selectively, I think it's a political partisan rhetoric. It would be wrong to therefore say that Manusmriti ka jo worst aspect is that is defining the current government. I think that would be too much of a stretch. And on the broader point about individual rights is what matters. Either the state should not have laws for marriage for anybody. Say it's a contract. Tum dono jao, you go and buy a contract in Reliance Retail, marry. You don't need a court for anything. And you buy a contract in Reliance Retail to divorce, and you separate your assets. That's one thing. If you have a law, then what is a nation? A nation is whereby we have a sense. We quote Ernest Renan. We say, what is a nation? A nation is a spiritual principle. People feel they're in it together in the past, in the present, in the future. How can you have an Ottoman system of millets where there was an Islamic Sharia at the top, but the Jews and the Christians were allowed their millets so long as they paid the jizya? In this case, in India, the so-called secularists want jizya to be received by the minorities instead of paying, while they keep their personal laws. That is completely unacceptable. How is that common citizenship? And this is an excuse, and nothing but an excuse to say there is no draft code of the UCC. The Hindu reformed law right now is as progressive as it gets. If there are one or two specific things you as in more generally people want to make more progressive, they're free to do so. Who in the BJP is opposing it? The BJP, in fact, is saying that they are talking about now raising the wedding age for
age of marriage
from 18 to 21. In fact, there are a lot of conservatives who are opposing. I and Rajiv, especially I, have spoken so much against birth-based caste system on Twitter, and you have to know how much hate I get for that. But I am reforming.
Let me interfere here because I will come back to the new idea again and again. Let us dissect a new idea. I think both the authors should tell us what are the different parts of new idea: religious, politics, economics, education, and where you can say, okay, this is my a new idea, because a new idea has many plurals into it. Because A becomes ideas rather than become the idea only, because one idea cannot change the Indian system. And what is a idea which you are talking? Because we are all coming back to same Hindu Muslim. That is the narrative which I have been hearing ever since I was born. And even the RSS still speaks about the same thing, Muslim, and everybody speaks about the Muslim Hindu. But that is not what idea you are talking about. I understand this is not the idea you mean. In new idea doesn't mean exclusivity of Muslims or Islam from this country. That doesn't mean it. But the way we are handling this subject at the moment, it becomes again us versus them. That is what a new idea are trying to understand. That what do you mean by a new idea in terms of civilization? What should be done in India now? How the narrative is shown should be dictated, as pointed out. Democratization of politics in this country has changed the entire narrative now. And people are now not so aggressively talking about secularism as they used to say earlier. Even the school education, most of the public school from where everybody comes now, they are not teaching what they used to teach earlier. Now there is change in the system also, but that will take generations. But I'm talking about a new idea for India. You are assuming we don't want new India. We want the existing idea, which has forgotten its ideas, which were quite golden in the past, maybe is better than what we are doing now. So I would like to just summarize in a way that this is the ancient A idea, which is much more pre-Gupta, where you want to go 5,000 old civilization, and you want to talk about Manusmriti and whatnot. That is not the debate, because debate is not meant for politics. But what is the A idea? I'm saying a new idea, which you can summarize. I don't want to discuss in Muslim.
No. See, first of all, this Hindu-Muslim thing only happened in the Uniform Civil Code discussion aspect. Rajiv and I have written in the book that in fact...
Because literature must come out of this, sir, because we are talking about literature.
No, of course.
It is a literature which is quite well researched, which I have told by everybody. I have not read it. But the way you are discussing is obviously you have done a lot of research there. And Pawan has already read it. He has given a lot of insight into the book. I can imagine what you have done in it. But I would still like to have a new idea dissected into various sections.
So I think the biggest new idea is that we are individual citizens, that there has to be freedom of choice, there has to be competition in the case of economic sphere, freedom to assert whatever identity I as an individual citizen of a free, united, democratic Republic of India have. Yes, sir.
And freedom to speak also
what our Constitution talks.
Yes, so our
equality before law.
Yeah, so in some ways, the new idea is also an old idea, which has as we make the case in the book, it has been sort of perverted, if I can use that word, over the decades. And what we are saying is we need to go back to the original liberal constitutional values.
So, Prabhuji, which is why this diagram on the book actually comes from the Constitution, the original copy of the Constitution, the fundamental rights section. So our concept is there is no intrinsic dichotomy between civilizational patriotism and constitutional patriotism.
The problem is the Constitution of India, liberals are also saying follow the Constitution.
Yes.
And the nationalists are also saying differentiate between nationalists and liberals.
So my point on that,
have no boundaries.
Prabhuji, on that point, I would just say, Prabhuji, there's the slogans, right? People chant these slogans, but then if we go deeper, if we peel deeper, dig deeper, then you see what the liberals have actually done. That record, I think, is the secular liberal sort of spokespersons who hold this flag, wave this flag at every opportunity. We can see what they have done.
For example,
75 years after independence, we remain a economy which has a per capita income of about $2,000. We remain a country where freedom of expression is routinely banned based on someone who's protesting, someone who has a veto. We've given these vetoes to many groups. We remain a country where religion is being doled out based on welfare is being doled out based on religion. So is this liberal? Is this secular?
Let me frame it differently. Idea of committed to a nation, not to a country. I'm coming back to that. Nuance is there between a nation and a country. The new idea of India that let India become a nation first. Is it?
Yes, so a part of it is that this civilization nation ban raha hai through this modern democratic state. It is a work in progress. Why are we saying it's a nation? Some people say you don't fully agree with them. Maybe Bengal and Punjab are their own, if not nationalities, sub-nationalities. But what we are saying is now it is very common for a Punjabi to study in Ahmedabad, work in Bangalore, and go and settle in Calcutta or vice versa. So that sense of movement, for example, was not possible for the mass of the people 100 years ago. So in that sense,
I'll take it further, because nation, as country has a geographical identity. Boundaries are defined, but nation may not have that, isn't it?
No, well, nation may not, which is why a nation without a state, we call in the book, is like a body without a spine. We quote exactly that.
There, India cannot be a nation because then you lose the boundary that you are going to
nation
type concept.
Nation has boundaries. Nation need not have boundaries. Like the Jews were a nation who did not have a state until they got Israel. But they remain a nation even today. It doesn't, just because they have gotten a state doesn't mean the nation is over. And even within nation and civilization, we differentiate by saying civilization is the largest group of people, which is the best, most coherent grouping of humanity, short of all of humanity itself. So the way we say is Western civilization is one grouping, but उसमें US is one. Let me just finish. प्रभु जी, आप मुझे जवाब नहीं दे रहा, आप सवाल पूछ रहे हैं. प्रभु जी, मैं सीधा जवाब दे रहा हूँ. मैं आपको सीधा जवाब दे रहा हूँ. मेरी बात सुनिए. अमेरिका एक नेशन है. France एक nation. America is a nation. Absolutely, it's a nation. France is one nation.
Agree? Come on. Is America a nation?
Well, it depends how you interpret it, but I think it's a valid question. I think, if I may just comment, I'll make it easier for Harsh and Rajiv. I think India is both a nation and a country, in my view. A country because the notion of Bharatvarsh has been defined 3,000 years ago in our country. And the conceit that the British had, which many historians like Sunil Khilnani support, that the British came and created India, is rubbish. And we know it. There is enough evidence to it. You don't have to get very het up about it. So there was a nation always, a country always in a civilizational sense with defined boundaries. But those boundaries physically did not define the ideas of that country.
Yes.
That became a young modern national republic in 1947. That is what is, I think, your new idea of India. Till some time ago, if I said in a certain group of people that I'm these days reading the Yoga Sutras, or I'm reading, let us say, the Brahma Sutras, so they would say, "Yaar, tum Sangi to nahi ho gaye." In other words, there was both abysmal ignorance and a complete lack of understanding of some of the remarkable legacies of a very ancient civilization.
It wasn't just ignorance, it was disdain. It was disdain.
Disdain, and that disdain was based on ignorance.
Ignorance.
Yes.
That
Complete
needs
ignorance.
No.
that
Because
to be corrected.
Pawan, you are very funny. I'm different. I have not found an answer yet. India is perhaps the only country or nation, whatever you want to call it, which are two names, which is India and Bharat.
Which itself
India, that is Bharat,
I
as
want
the
to ask
constitution
this
says.
question, that which idea you are saying? Is Bharat
So-
a nation or India a nation?
So प्रभु जी
भारत-
chapter 1 का नाम है India, comma that is Bharat. Chapter 1 का नाम है India,
That is in the
that is,
constitution also, India, that is
and
Bharat Varsh.
which
But
is why we are
not-
saying that.
I asked Prime Minister Modi also this question in a private discussion. He has not given me interview after becoming the Prime Minister. I asked Atalji this question same. I asked many leaders why India was not called Bharat.
See, I'll tell you.
It is a
First
fact of Nehruism because he is a Pawan knows
very
about
important-
No,
Nehru.
for example, if you see the Indian passport, it says Bharat Ganrajya, Republic of India.
हिंदी
You
में
are
तो भारत
getting into
बोलते
what
हैं.
is
हिंदी में तो
written.
भारत ही
What
बोलते
is- why we go out and say we are not Bharat Varshia, we are Indians.
See,
Why
see,
did
अगर-
Everybody says I am American, I am Chinese,
Prabhu-
I am Japanese, I am
Prabhuji,
Indian, I am not
Prabhuji,
Bharatiya.
let me now answer some of your questions. Otherwise, answers नहीं होंगे, खाली questions हो जाएंगे.
No, is India a nation
Appa-
or Bharat a nation?
प्रभु जी मुझे बोलने दीजिए, मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ. हमने कहा है इंडिया में the nation and the civilization are both coincident, and that is not the case in the case of the West, where US and France are separate countries, but the West is the larger civilization. We've given a very clear example that India में आप you can argue a bit about Nepal, Bhutan को add करे या नहीं करे civilization में, but basically in India the nation and the civilization coincide, which is why it is a civilizational country the way only China is. And if we go to civilization republic, वो तो China भी नहीं है. That is what makes India very unique. A nation and a civilization coincidental upon each other, and plus a democratic state. It is the only civilizational republic in the entire world. And civilizational republic का दूसरा तरीका बोलने का तरीका है individual rights in a civilizational state, which is the subtitle of the book. Now, it's not Hindu versus Muslim in the book. We actually say, we quote a lot about Hamid Dalwai's life, which I'm sure both of you know better than us because we are much younger. And we give the example that one of the failures of the Indian state is it has not been able to support minorities within minorities. It has not supported dissidents within the minority communities who went out. 50 years ago, Hamid Dalwai and his wife were out on the street saying, please ban triple talaq. 1968, we quote chapter and verse, date and time. And literally just a few weeks after Hamid Dalwai's wife died, triple talaq was finally banned. So this is a failure. Similarly, Charlie Hebdo cartoons was reprinted in an Urdu journal in Mumbai when BJP was the chief minister. BJP had a government in the center, but we as a state could not provide protection to that journalist, Sadia Dalvi. I think if I'm getting
Shireen Dalvi.
Shireen Dalvi, when she reprinted Charlie Hebdo. So ये किसका failure है?
But साहब मेरे को डर एक और है. मैं आपसे कह देता हूँ, I am with you on all of this. I've argued it in my recent books. Why? Because I think it needs course correction. But if you unleash through this well-intentioned need to make correction, forces which become as intolerant to any depiction of Hinduism, which has always allowed great discussion, dialogue, and eclecticism, then the consequences could be rather bad for Hinduism and civilization that we talk about itself.
Yeah, we don't want that. We don't want that.
If MF Hussain makes a cartoon, or it was not a cartoon also, it was a painting. And groups get him banned. I believe, or if there is a discussion in a seminar room on certain aspects of the Manusmriti, I can quote to you chapter and verse of how women were respected before the 2nd century CE when the Manusmriti is supposed to have been collated. There was respect. How many examples can you give?
MF Hussain made those. MF Hussain.
So, let me finish. But I can have a discussion on that. But if in a seminar room we start discussing Manusmriti, and I get up as a fairly proud Hindu, and I say that our religion needs reform, and these aspects of the Manusmriti are unacceptable today, and I am pilloried by Hindus. Or as the example you give, couples sitting in a park are being pilloried by Hindus today, not in the name of the great tradition we have, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, not as per great Shikar poetry of our country, but of Victorian morality. Where has this come from?
No, we have to oppose that. We have to oppose that. But I'll simply say on the MFS one example, Rajiv and I think we've written in the book. We've definitely spoken in.
Is it reactive or proactive? Like I was mentioning earlier.
In the sense that उन्होंने paintings 1970s में बनाई थी वो, लेकिन वो सारा गुस्सा सलमान रश्दी की किताब बैन होने के बाद MF हुसैन का केस बड़ा केस बना. That actually tells you.
I urge you, you two young authors who are spearheading a new intellectual paradigm by which we can see our country, nation, and civilization. Please be sensitive.
Yeah.
Don't get into reactive, proactive. Hinduism has certain principles. The richer it gets in its own ideas, it will conquer. It will overcome.
I agree.
It will rejuvenate. The very idea that you are espousing.
And it should grow beyond India.
Don't become soft on what needs to be, what is wrong among those who claim the high pulpit to speak for Hinduism.
I agree, Pavan. I fully agree with you.
All three of you, I will just try to say something because Pavan has been very talking about it. Let me see. A new idea means, in terms of what I can interpret, that cannot be coercive correction. It has to be persuasive correction. You have to replace coercive with what is people's perception is that all the people are trying to have a coercive correction and misusing the authority of the state or the police, whatever you want to say. And there is a reaction from the other side. Liberals are not able to raise that kind of volume of voice which they were cacophony, which they were used to earlier. But I think a new idea could be that India needs some kind of a correction. Bharat needs particularly. India should become Bharat's first. Then it can also have some kind of civilization and which has lost in the process of secularization of India. That is what I feel.
I think that is really well said, and I think it's a great note to end on. Thank you, all of you. I think it was a wonderful discussion, and may we have many more of these. Thank you. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pavan ji. It was lovely discussing with you.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Anytime. And
Thank
let
you
me
so much.
congratulate you again on the book. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed this session. If you would like to know more about OLF 2020 or watch other videos, please visit newindianexpress.com and eventexpress.com. If you are more of a social media person, please visit our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channels.